This story does not begin with a treasure, a prophecy, or a revelation meant to elevate you above others. It begins with a missing reference point. Every civilization that ever mapped the sky did so for one reason only: orientation. Not prediction. Not worship. Orientation keeps movement honest when landmarks disappear. When the ground shifts, the sky becomes the ruler. So when this narrative speaks of a lost star map, it is not talking about a chart of constellations. It is pointing to a removed framework, a way of navigating complexity that was taken out of circulation because it kept resolving to the same outcome: you. Not as a person to be found, but as a function that kept reappearing wherever order was restored. Maps are hidden when they disrupt existing routes. If a map keeps leading travelers away from power centers, away from accumulation, away from dominance, and toward integration, restraint, and sequence, it becomes inconvenient. Systems that rely on confusion cannot tolerate accurate navigation. Confusion decentralizes responsibility. Clarity redistributes it. This is why the map disappeared. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was too efficient. It bypassed spectacle. It dissolved hierarchy. It led travelers back to themselves with no promise of elevation. That kind of guidance does not create followers. It creates steadiness. Steadiness cannot be monetized easily. The phrase, "it leads to you," is not saying you are the destination. It is saying you are the orientation point the map kept resolving around. Wherever the lines converged, across eras, cultures, failed systems, the same pattern emerged. Someone who reduced noise without force, restored sequence without command, and allowed structures to continue without visible ownership. You have felt this before without the language for it. Moments when things made sense only after you arrived. Situations that felt unsolvable until pace slowed around you. Conversations that clarified simply because you refused to escalate them. This is not mysticism. This is navigation reactivating. Star maps do not tell you where to go. They tell you where you are. That distinction matters. Anyone can follow directions. Very few can locate themselves accurately in changing conditions. Accuracy under change is rare enough that stories inflate it into prophecy. But prophecy here is misdirection. What matters is placement, not foresight. The reason this map is lost is because it cannot be mass-used. It requires internal calibration. Without restraint, patience, and proportion, the map reads as nonsense. Lines appear to go nowhere. Distances feel incorrect. Only when impulse quiets does the orientation snap into place. That snap is what people mistake for revelation. This narrative places you at the center not to idolize you, but to remove excuses. If orientation keeps resolving through you, then maintenance becomes your responsibility. Not leadership, not influence. Maintenance. You are not meant to move the sky. You are meant to read it without panic and act accordingly. Do not mythologize the imagery. Myth is scaffolding for attention, not instruction. The instruction is plain. When you are present, direction clarifies. When you force direction, it blurs. When you wait for alignment, paths open without effort. That pattern is repeatable. Repeatability is the only proof that matters. Hold this grounding truth carefully. The map does not predict your future. It corrects your position in the present. And when position is correct, movement stops feeling urgent. It becomes exact. This story unfolds next by explaining why the map could not be used by those who needed certainty instead of clarity, and why it only reappears when someone stops needing answers and starts respecting sequence. Star maps stop working the moment someone demands certainty from them. Certainty freezes interpretation. It turns orientation into prediction and pressure into belief. The map described in this story disappears whenever certainty becomes the goal, because certainty breaks navigation. Navigation requires adjustment, not conviction. It requires willingness to relocate yourself again and again as conditions change. This is why the map never survived institutions. Institutions seek fixed answers. Fixed answers create authority. Authority creates obedience. Obedience removes responsibility from the individual. The map does the opposite. It returns responsibility to the user. It does not promise arrival. It only confirms position. That alone is threatening to any system built on control. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership. It's your calling. When certainty dominates, people stop listening to signal and start defending conclusions. The sky becomes decoration instead of reference. Stars turn into symbols rather than tools. At that moment, the map becomes unreadable. Not destroyed, ignored. And what is ignored long enough is eventually labeled lost. The narrative says the map was hidden because it leads to you. The deeper truth is more precise. It leads to your way of reading before deciding. Your posture, not your outcome. The map aligns only when someone is willing to admit they don't yet know where they are. That admission is rare. Most people would rather guess loudly than pause quietly. You have already practiced this without ceremony. When pressure increased, you slowed instead of accelerating. When options multiplied, you reduced them instead of expanding reach. When asked for conclusions, you asked for conditions. Those behaviors collapse false certainty and allow real orientation to surface. The map responds to that behavior immediately. This is why others could never use it. They approached with ambition, fear, or prophecy hunger. You approached with accuracy hunger. Accuracy does not reward the ego. It rewards survival. It preserves resources. It reduces regret. Over time, systems recognize this difference even when people cannot articulate it. Notice what happens internally when you stop demanding answers. Your body settles first. Breath lengthens. Vision widens. Decisions start sequencing themselves rather than competing. That is the map activating, not in the sky but in perception. The oldest navigators trusted their bodies as much as their instrument. When instruments failed, perception carried them. This map assumes perception is trained. Certainty wants to lock the future in place. Orientation wants to keep the present honest. A locked future requires faith. An honest present requires attention. Faith makes people follow. Attention makes people correct themselves early. Correction saves lives and systems alike. That is why the map never promised salvation. It promised fewer catastrophes. You will also notice something important. The map does not comfort. Comfort dulls perception. Orientation sharpens it without panic. The calm you feel in alignment is not reassurance. It is reduction of noise. Noise always masqueraded as urgency. Once noise recedes, urgency collapses naturally. This is also why the map leads through you rather than to you. Leading to you would make you a destination. Leading through you keeps you as a reference node. Nodes connect paths. Destinations end them. Ending paths is how systems die. Nodes keep movement viable. Keep this distinction precise. Certainty asks, where will this end? Orientation asks, where am I now? The first creates followers. The second creates navigators. The reason this map reappears in your life is not destiny. It is compatibility. You did not need certainty to move. You needed clarity to wait. Waiting protected the signal long enough for orientation to return. The map remains hidden to those who want guarantees. It remains visible to those who accept responsibility. And what follows next explains why this form of navigation cannot be shared openly, and why attempts to copy it always collapse into superstition once restraint is removed. The Lost Star Map was never meant to be taught, distributed, or explained in instructions. That is the reason it keeps disappearing. Transmission assumes sameness. Navigation requires situational entry. A map that works only when the reader's internal state is calibrated cannot survive copying, because copying removes context. Context is the operating system here. Every attempt to transmit this map turned it into symbols, rituals, or legends. Symbols survive when function is forgotten. Rituals emerge when people want the effect without the discipline. Legends rise when outcomes are remembered but the process is lost. None of these are the map. They are residue left behind when entry fails. Entry requires a precise internal condition, willingness to suspend momentum. Momentum blinds. It carries assumptions forward faster than they can be verified. The map collapses under momentum because momentum refuses correction. That is why those who tried to seize it never found it. They were already moving too fast to register position. You did not receive this map. You slowed into it. You made space without knowing why. You allowed confusion to remain unresolved longer than comfort requested. That interval, uncomfortable, quiet, unproductive by external measures, is where the map becomes legible. Most people exit the interval prematurely. You stayed. This is why the phrase, "it leads to you," keeps sounding paradoxical. What it actually means is this: the map only appears when the reader's behavior no longer demands outcome. When outcome chasing stops, orientation resumes. And orientation always resolves around whoever is not pulling on it. Attempts to explain this always fail because explanation happens after coherence, not before it. If you describe the map, listeners try to use the description as a shortcut. Shortcuts bypass entry conditions. Bypassed entry collapses the signal. What remains is superstition. This is also why secrecy is misattributed to control. The map is not hidden by guardians. It's hidden by misuse. The moment it is approached as a tool for advantage, it vanishes from perception. Advantage distorts reading. Clarity requires neutrality. Neutrality cannot coexist with extraction. You may notice this pattern repeating in your life. Whenever you attempt to use your clarity to gain leverage, it dulls. Whenever you relax into proportion, it sharpens again. That feedback loop is the map correcting itself in real time. No punishment, no reward, just fidelity to orientation. The key insight here is uncomfortable for modern thinking. Not everything meaningful can be shared without degradation. Some functions rely on scarcity of readiness, not scarcity of information. Information can spread infinitely. Readiness cannot. The map survives because readiness remains rare. That rarity is not elitism. It is physics applied to behavior. Systems overload when too many agents move simultaneously without orientation. Limiting access protects the whole. This is why the map refused centralization. Centralization turns nodes into endpoints. Endpoints terminate flow. Remember this distinction precisely. What can be transmitted creates followers. What must be entered creates navigators. You were not selected to carry the map. You are compatible with the conditions that activate it. Compatibility cannot be copied. It can only be cultivated through restraint, patience, and allowance for uncertainty. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow His kingdom. Be the blessing. This is why the map keeps returning to you without instruction, because you do not chase it. Chasing fractures signal. Allowing restores it. Next, this narrative must address a final misunderstanding: why following this map does not isolate you, but quietly reorganizes the space around you, often without visible coordination. That clarification matters, because many mistake orientation for withdrawal. It is not withdrawal. It is correct distance applied consistently. It would be easy to assume that proper orientation pulls you away from others, that clarity creates distance, that restraint isolates. That assumption is wrong. What actually happens is more subtle. Space reorganizes around steadiness. You don't step away from the world stops crowding you. Distance appears not because you withdraw, but because friction dissolves. When orientation returns, roles begin to sort themselves without negotiation. People move to where they function best. Conversations shorten. Expectations clarify. Decisions stop colliding. None of this requires instruction because instruction would imply hierarchy. What's happening instead is self-sorting, the natural behavior of systems when a stable reference exists. You've seen this before. Rooms feel calmer without you asserting anything. Groups transition phases more cleanly. Disagreements lose heat before they crystallize into camp. This is not avoidance. It is timing restored. When timing is right, people don't need to push against each other to be heard. Isolation happens when clarity is hoarded. Orientation does the opposite. It makes paths legible so others can choose freely. Freedom of choice dissolves resentment. Resentment is what creates perceived distance. When resentment drops, proximity becomes optional and healthy instead of forced and fragile. You may notice that people no longer linger unnecessarily. They arrive, settle what needs settling, and move on. That efficiency is often misread as coldness. In truth, it is respect. Wasted time is disrespect disguised as engagement. Clean endings preserve energy on all sides. This reorganization also affects how you are approached. Instead of demands, you receive updates. Instead of persuasion attempts, you receive context. That shift means people are aligning with sequence rather than trying to bend it. They intuitively understand that pressure won't work here. Pressure cannot override orientation. It's important not to intervene to recreate closeness artificially. Artificial closeness disrupts self-sorting and reintroduces imbalance. Let relationships find their natural cadence. Some will deepen quietly. Others will loosen without conflict. Both outcomes are correct. Correctness is the metric now, not attachment. Another sign of reorganization is how boundaries stop needing reinforcement. You don't repeat yourself. You don't restate limits. People feel where the edge is because the edge is consistently held, not defended. Defended boundaries invite testing. Held boundaries guide behavior effortlessly. This is also where leadership myths fall apart. Leaders gather. Orientation distribute. Gathering concentrates pressure. Distribution relieves it. You are not meant to be a center of gravity that pulls everything inward. You are a node that keeps distances accurate so movement remains viable. Do not confuse this with passivity. You still act when sequence requires it. But action becomes surgical. Few moves. Clean timing. Little residue. After you act, the system continues without you hovering. Hovering is how dependency forms. Dependency degrades resilience. Hold this operational truth clearly. Orientation does not isolate. It prevents entanglement. Entanglement exhausts. Prevention preserves. As the map's logic settles deeper, you'll feel less need to manage perception. Perception aligns when behavior remains predictable. Predictability is kindness at scale. It lets others plan without anxiety. You are not stepping out of humanity. You are stepping into correct spacing within it. Correct spacing allows community without fusion, autonomy without fragmentation, and cooperation without control. This is why the map survived underground. Not everyone can tolerate this balance. Many prefer intensity to accuracy. Intensity feels alive. Accuracy sustains life. Let the environment continue rearranging itself. Do not rush to name what's happening. Names freeze processes that still rely on motion. Next comes a deeper layer. Why this map never leads you forward in a straight line, and why apparent detours are often the most accurate course available. That reframing is essential for sustaining orientation over time. One of the earliest mistakes people make when they encounter orientation is expecting direction to feel linear. That expectation comes from efficiency models built for machines, not for living systems. Living systems do not move in straight lines, they curve toward stability. The Lost Star map reflects this reality with precision. It does not offer forward momentum, it offers correct curvature. Straight lines assume the terrain is fixed. It never is. Conditions shift, loyalties move, information decays, and internal states fluctuate. A straight path ignores these variables and pretends force will compensate. Curved paths acknowledge variation and absorb it gradually. That absorption is why you often feel like you are not advancing, even when progress is undeniable. You've experienced this as pauses that made no logical sense at the time. Delays that seemed unnecessary. Redirections that didn't match your plans. Yet each time, something destabilizing passed you by. What looked like stalling was actually course correction invisible until later. The map does not reward impatience. It protects coherence. This is why detours in your life never felt chaotic, only inconvenient. Chaos produces panic. Inconvenience produces irritation, but irritation still leaves awareness intact. Awareness is required for orientation to function. Panic shuts perception down. The map avoids panic by curving the route before panic becomes necessary. Another misunderstanding is assuming the map is trying to get you somewhere new. It is not. It is constantly checking whether where you are still fits. When fit degrades, the map bends the path away before fracture occurs. Those bends feel like loss only if identity is tied to the old direction. Identity resists curvature. Identity wants narrative continuity. Orientation cares about survivability, not story satisfaction. That conflict is where most people abandon the map. They prefer a meaningful crash to a quiet correction. You repeatedly chose correction, even when it bruised your narrative of progress. That choice kept the map legible. Notice how this has shaped your instinctive timing. You move only when multiple signals align, not because you seek confirmation, but because you recognize distortion early. Early detection allows small adjustments. Small adjustments prevent dramatic consequences. This is why your life rarely requires radical recovery. Recovery is expensive. Prevention is cheap. The map's curved logic also explains why others struggle to follow you. They expect you to arrive somewhere definable. Instead, you keep returning to fit. Fit rarely looks impressive. It looks boring, sane, and unexploitable. That makes it uninteresting to those measuring success by acceleration. Here is the central operational insight. Straight lines optimize speed. Curved paths optimize continuity. Continuity outlasts speed every time. If you ever feel doubt because your progress doesn't match linear expectations, that doubt is coming from borrowed metrics. Drop them immediately. Use only one metric. Does this reduce future correction? If yes, the map is working. You may also notice a growing indifference to milestones. Milestones interrupt curvature by demanding recognition. Recognition freezes motion temporarily. Motion frozen at the wrong moment destabilizes orientation. This is why celebrations around you feel muted or delayed. It's not ingratitude. It's sequence preservation. Let the map curve without explanation. Let detours close quietly behind you. Let others rush ahead and learn expensively. Your path remains intact because it flexes. What comes next matters deeply. Why the map's final reference point is not the future at all, but a continuously recalibrated present, and why that is the only place orientation can survive long-term. The final misunderstanding about this map is the most persistent one, the belief that it is aiming toward a future state. It is not. Futures shift too quickly to anchor orientation. The map resolves, again and again, back to the present moment correctly read. That is not limitation. It is precision. Orientation can only exist where feedback is immediate. When people say the map leads somewhere, what they are actually feeling is relief from misplacement. Misplacement is exhausting. It forces constant correction after the fact. When placement is correct, effort drops. The body knows first. Shoulders unclench. Breath slows. Decisions stop jostling for dominance. That settling is not arrival. It is accuracy restored. Accuracy does not wait for tomorrow. You have lived this cycle repeatedly. Each time you tried to project too far ahead, optimize outcomes, lock plans, guarantee results, the signal degraded. Each time you returned to the present, checking constraints, capacity, timing, the signal sharpened. The map was never pulling you forward. It was pulling you back into alignment before deviation accumulated. This is why the present becomes the hardest place for many to stay. It offers no fantasy, no promise, no immunity from responsibility. The present demands attentiveness without reward. Yet it is the only place where correction costs the least. Futures charge interest on mistakes. Presents do not. The map survives by refusing to speculate. Speculation creates attachment. Attachment creates pressure. Pressure distorts reading. Distortion turns orientation into ideology. Ideology replaces feedback with belief, and from that point on, movement becomes blind. The map counters this by continuously snapping attention back to what can be verified now. Notice how this shifts your relationship with time. Deadlines lose dominance. You still respect them, but you no longer let them bully your perception. You trade urgency for sequencing. Sequencing ensures that when action occurs, it lands cleanly. Clean landings eliminate the need for justification later. This also explains why the map feels quiet. Noise lives in projection. Quiet lives in confirmation. Confirmation does not excite the imagination, it satisfies the nervous system. The satisfaction is subtle but enduring. It doesn't spike, it steadies. Another critical effect appears here. Fear loses narrative fuel. Fear feeds on imagined futures. When attention returns to the present, fear has nothing to elaborate. What remains are solvable conditions. Conditions can be addressed. Stories cannot. The present also dissolves hierarchy implicitly. In the present, titles don't act, people do. Roles don't decide, conditions do. Everyone is subject to the same constraints. That equality is unsettling to systems built on deferred authority. It is exactly why this map could never be institutionalized. Hold this rule clearly. The map does not guide ambition. It disciplines attention. Attention, once disciplined, produces accuracy. Accuracy produces trust in your own timing. Trust removes the need for spectacle. You might feel tempted to summarize or explain this clarity to others. Resist that impulse. Explanation converts presence into concept. Concept can be debated. Presence cannot. Let your choices demonstrate orientation without commentary. People who need explanation are not ready for entry anyway. As this phase stabilizes, you'll notice you stop waiting for the future to validate you. Validation arrives in the form of fewer repairs, fewer regrets, and quieter days. Those are not small rewards. They are the dividends of remaining accurately placed. The map's genius is simple. Stay present long enough, and the future arrives without collision. What remains now is the final integration, how this orientation persists without effort, and how the story itself dissolves once the practice becomes automatic. That closing matters, because the map's greatest protection is that it no longer needs to be remembered to work. At a certain point, the map stops appearing. Not because it failed, but because it succeeded. Maps exist to correct disorientation. Once orientation becomes instinctive, the guide withdraws. This is the quiet ending few stories tell, because it lacks drama. Yet it is the only ending that holds. Practice replaces reference. You will not notice a moment of triumph. What you'll notice instead is absence, of friction, of second-guessing, of the need to check where you stand. You'll still verify conditions, but verification will feel light, automatic, unburdened. The internal pause that once took effort will arrive on its own. Decision will follow without argument. That flow is not intuition alone. It is orientation fully embodied. When this happens, the phrase, "the map leads to you," finally loses all mystery. It was never pointing at destiny or importance. It was describing a convergence where reading conditions accurately became your default. Once that default holds, the map has no job left. Keeping it would be redundant. Redundancy is how systems slow down. This is also the moment the narrative dissolves. Stories are helpful while learning. They collapse when mastery becomes quiet. Carrying the story beyond this point would be a mistake. It would reintroduce identity where only conduct is needed. Conduct is enough now. You'll experience days that feel ordinary, and realize later they were decisive. Not because of what happened, but because nothing broke. You'll walk through situations that once demanded preparation and notice you are already calibrated. That realization will pass quickly. There is no need to hold on to it. Holding on to it creates distraction. The system around you will continue reorganizing, but you won't track it. Tracking creates self-reference. Self-reference invites distortion. Let effects remain peripheral. Your task is narrower and clearer. Maintain accuracy without ceremony. There is one final discipline to keep intact. Do not try to teach the map. Not because others don't deserve it, but because teaching converts an instinct back into an instruction. Instructions get misapplied. Instinct corrects itself in real time. If asked, offer practices, not explanations. Practices create readiness. Explanations create imitation without grounding. You may occasionally feel the urge to look for the map again, to confirm you're still aligned. When that urge appears, treat it as signal, not command. Slow slightly. Recheck constraints. Resume. That's it. The map now lives in how you respond, not in what you consult. Remember this closing truth. What saved you cannot stay visible once it becomes who you are.